Jesus invites us to check our attitudes towards fear and people. 12th Sunday in the Ordinary Time, the Gospel reading, Matthew chapter 10, verses from 26 to 33. Fear is a common experience of everyone, but we are called to realize whom to fear and for what to fear. Similarly, we deal with people in our daily circumstances, but we are called to check our attitude towards people. In today's Gospel, Matthew chapter 10, verse 30, Jesus tells very solemnly, "Fear not, because you are more worthy than the sparrows. Even these sparrows, which are quite cheap, because two can be bought for a penny, even these sparrows are taken care of by the Heavenly Father, and you are so significant that even the hair on your head is counted," which means God is a caring God, loving God, and He protects us. So let us not fear. But the same Jesus in verse 26 says, "Fear the one who can determine your destiny." These words of Jesus invite us to check our attitude towards fear. Fear is a sign of lack of faith. In Mark's Gospel, chapter 4, verse 40, Jesus asked the apostles who were frightened because of the storm in the sea as they were traveling in the boat. He's asking them, "Why are you afraid? Don't you have faith?" Which means fear and faith cannot go together. And the Bible scholars say there are 365 times such expressions are found in the Bible. Have no fear, don't be afraid, have courage. Such expressions. 365, it reminds us that as though God likes to give this message of don't have fear every day in our life throughout the year. But what about the leap year? Because we have one extra day, 366 days. Maybe we can understand if a person can live without fear for 3 years continuously, all the days, in the fourth year, that one extra day also he or she will not have fear. This is just a way of saying. So the point is, perhaps God knows as humanity develops more and more achievements in technologies and comforts, the psychological stamina of human beings will be less and less. That is why God made it a point to give us this message of don't have fear every day in our life throughout the year. Because in the modern times we find any little thing can disturb us very badly. We get discouraged or depressed very quickly. Any little disappointment or failure makes us lose all our hopes, and once hopes are lost, the meaning in life is lost, and when meaning in life is lost, everything is lost. We become psychologically fragile. We are filled with fears, and in extreme cases, unfortunately, it ends with suicide. We all need courage and strength to face life's challenges. Jesus says, "Don't fear," but in the book of Proverbs, we find chapter 9, verse 10 says, "Fear of God is the beginning of wisdom." Again, Jesus himself says, "Fear the one who can destroy or who can determine your destiny," which means we have to have the right attitude of fears. There are different types of fears. We fear our safety, our health, death, and some misfortunes, and our status in society, etc. But oftentimes we don't fear God. When we say we have to fear God, we should understand this fear of God is a positive one, not a negative one. This fear of God does not enslave us, but it frees us. This fear of God is not the fear for punishment. It must be based on the realization of the unconditional love of God for us. I must tell myself, I must not insult or hurt the great love that God has for me. It is like the parents at home. If the children obey the parents just because of the fear of punishment, the parents will not be happy. On the other hand, if the children obey their parents because of love, meaning my parents are loving so much, I must not hurt their love and affection, then they obey, then the parents will be happy. Similarly, our fear of God is not a negative one, fear for punishment or reward or award, etc. It should be positive fear, not enslaving fear. It must be enlightening fear. It must be freeing, liberating fear, and only that kind of fear can lead us to wisdom, as the book of Proverbs says. Coming to the second point, Jesus says, "You are more worthy than the little sparrows," which means, in the eyes of God, everybody is valuable and they are respected with all their dignity. If God values us so highly, if we are so very noble and significant in the eyes of God, how can we ill treat one another among ourselves? Psalm 8:5 says, "You have made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor," which means every human person is almost raised to the level of the angels, and God has crowned us with glory and honor. Again, the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 26 and 27 say, "We have been created in the image and likeness of God." Today, unfortunately, we value human beings only for what they have, not for what they are. We are giving importance to having rather than being. All the externals are so very important in our eyes that we forget the real dignity and nobility of a human person. Once, Bernard Shaw was invited for a function. He went there in a very simple and ordinary plain clothes, but he was stopped at the entrance. He was told that the function was only for very important persons and high officials, and ordinary people were not allowed inside. The god obviously did not know Bernard Shaw. Bernard Shaw went back to his house, changed his clothes with some expensive coat and suit, and again he went to the party. This time he was gladly welcomed and let in. During the time of dinner, Bernard Shaw took some food snacks and filled the pockets of his coat. All were wondering around him, and he told them, "I was let in this house hall because of my dress, coat, and suit. So it is right that my dress eats first, and then I will take, because I am not respected for what I am, but only for what I wear." It makes very sense today. Einstein, the great scientist, once he said, "What counts in life cannot be counted, and what can be counted does not really count in life." We are so busy with counting the externals, our possessions like our houses, jewels, ornaments, cars, and so on, but in the final analysis, they don't really count. What really counts is our love, care, concern, peace, harmony, understanding, forgiveness, tolerance, and so on, but these cannot be counted. And we should ask ourselves how easily we take people for granted, especially those who do the ordinary menial jobs for us: cooks, gardeners, those who regularly clean the roads and drainages, and so on. They may be poor, they may not be well dressed up, they may not be educated, but still they also have their dignity and worth as children of God. Matthew chapter 10 verse 8 10 sorry Matthew chapter 18 verse 10 says, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven," which means everybody is so significant and precious in the eyes of God. Once, in a big factory where they pack and preserve food items to be exported to foreign countries, is a big factory. The manager there was very kind and human. He would deal with every worker very cordially, irrespective of their status or designation. One evening, as all their workers are winding up their duty and returning home, he went inside the cold storage where the food stuff and all the snacks are kept preserved. He went to that cold storage room to check. As he returned, he realized that the door of the cold storage was locked by mistake. He could not open it from inside. He rang the emergency alarm, but no one was around to hear that. And unfortunately, he had not taken his cell phone with him or any other device with him. He was banging at the door very loudly, but no worker was around, and there were actually double doors to maintain the temperature. And he was getting really panicky. He was so worried. He got frightened. The cold storage room's temperature was about minus 25 degrees to preserve the food stuff. He got frightened. If no one turns around to rescue him, he would be frozen to death. That is sure and certain. He was tired of banging at the door. He was getting frozen slowly. A few minutes later, the door was opened from outside and he saw the watchman there. And he took the manager out very quickly and draped him with a blanket and gave him a cup of hot coffee, and he was revived. The manager was obviously in tears, tears of joy and gratitude. He was thanking the watchman for saving his life. Had he not come on time, he would have been frozen to death. The manager asked the watchman, "But how did you know that I was locked up inside? Did you hear the noise that I was banging, or did you see the light or something?" And the watchman said, "No, sir. Every day you will wish me good night as you leave the factory. Today I did not see you going out. I was just wondering, you might be working in your office late evening. I went there, you were not there. I checked in a few other places I could not find. Something struck me to check the cold storage, and I was there to see, and it was uh, locked from outside, but I could hear that someone inside. So I just opened and I saw you. I rushed to help you. I saw you almost fainted, breathless. Only God sent me there at that right time to save you, sir, because you are such a good and kind man to all of us. See, my dear friends, how a small act of wishing the watchman every day could save the life of the manager. If the manager had thought, after all, he is a watchman, and I am the manager of the big factory, why to wish him? Why to reply his greetings? The watchman would not know that the manager was still inside and would not have gone to look for him. Today, in the modern world, it is the greatest sin to ignore someone, to take him or her for granted. When we don't pay attention, when we don't talk to him or her, we just don't bother about the person. His or her existence just doesn't bother us. Our pride, our possessions, our status just blind our eyes in such a way that we don't bother to say hello to them or to care for them. When God has created him or her so precious in his eyes, who are we, after all mortal humans, to ignore and ill treat one another? We are called to check our attitude towards our fellow human beings.